views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronxnet's program where we talk to writers and journalists and editors and photographers and filmmakers and really anybody putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. This evening we're going to extend the boundaries a little bit, as we often do. We're going to have a reporter from City and State New York who actually wrote about a Brooklyn issue. But I think it has some interesting implications for the borough of the Bronx. And then in the second part of our show, we're going to talk to some WFUV reporters who do a Bronxnet program about the Bronx and issues beyond. So to get started, let's say good evening to Rebecca Lewis from City and State New York. Rebecca, nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me on.
You revealed to me, and I did not know this, that your background includes the aforementioned WFUV, of course, Fordham's radio station. So why don't we rewind your personal clock there and find out, what happened at WFUV, how come you were there, and a little bit about your interest in journalism to begin with.
I was deciding what school I wanted to go to for college, and I wanted to do journalism, and I was kind of debating journalism programs and hands-on, hands-off experiences. And when I visited Fordham and saw that they had FUV there, I thought, nothing can compare to this. I mean, when else can you say that you work for an NPR-affiliated public radio station, almost entirely run by, not entirely run, but largely with a very large student staff who send out reporters to events, to cover the mayor, to cover the governor, to cover local stories, citywide stories, statewide stories. And I thought, I can't pass this up. And as soon as I went to Fordham, my first freshman year, I went to the first seminar, first meeting. I said, sign me up. And I think my first or second semester freshman year, I was doing a workshop. And by the summer, I was being sent all over the city to report.
And you did radio news, but or were you in the studio? Like what did you do?
A little bit of everything. I did newscasts. I did spot stories. I produced a podcast. And so it's been very ingrained in me, the speaking to microphone, holding up your hands so you know how far away you should be, and tilting it just right, and debating, do I want a pop filter? Do I not want a pop filter?
Wow.
Sounds a little bit better without, but you risk popping your peas without it.
All of a sudden, I like you better. We have a lot in common. I mean, I did it way back when, but that's real nice. One thing missing in your description, and then a follow-up question, then I really do want to get to this Brooklyn issue, which is a citywide issue. Where are you from? I mean, did you come from elsewhere to go to Fordham, or are you a Bronx girl?
I'm from Long Island. I'm from a Bronx dad and a Queens mother. My father was very happy that I was going to school in the Bronx. He's grew up in Co-op City.
And then the last question before we roll up our sleeves, what attracts you to journalism? You certainly lived the part at FUV. You're obviously working at a wonderful publication. What motivates you to be, and why did you say this is what I want to do?
It's kind of tough to pin down. I always liked writing, and then I was trying to figure out what I want to do about a career with writing. And I took a journalism class in high school, and I thought, you know what? This seems right. I think I want to do this. I want to write. I want to tell stories. I want to tell the news.
It's believe me, I know I've been doing this for a very long time. It's never ending. Well, so let's talk about it, and rather than keep people in suspense, the thing that interested me was Industry City over there in Sunset Park, and the notion was there was going to be a rezoning to redevelop the area, to build up the area that was going to create jobs. But as the process unfolded, and now we're at a point where, in fact, the project has been completely rejected. You know, you wrote all about that. Talk to me about what you started out writing about and where it ended up.
Well, the industry city rezoning in Sunset Park, Brooklyn is seen by a lot of people, kind of called the Amazon 2.0, an opportunity to redevelop a part of the city to bring in hundreds of, not hundreds, tens of thousands of new jobs, yeah. Tens of thousands of new jobs. And a lot of supporters were saying, we really need this right now. We're in a financial downturn. A lot of people are out of work. You know, we can redevelop this waterfront area, this waterfront property to bring more jobs to Sunset Park. And this has been going on for quite some time. You know, the proposal, I think, goes back as far as 2013 or 2014. The owners of Industry City have been fighting for this. They've been planning for it for years. But it's been plagued with problems from the get-go. A lot of community pushback, a lot of community members who felt that it would cause gentrification, that it wasn't the best move for Sunset Park. And as it kept going, opposition continued to grow from community members to local lawmakers to Congress members. But there was a lot of people who supported it as well, a lot of local business owners, certain 32BJ, the union supported it as well. You know, it was highly contentious, especially when the local council member Carlos Menchaca came out against it, and you had council members from outside of the district, outside of the borough, including the Bronx's Richie Torres, saying, we can't let the member kill this. This has citywide impact. Ultimately, though, the developers decided to pull the rezoning application. They cited a lack of leadership, the fact that the community members would not come on board. In the end, this is seen as a major victory for progressive activists, people like Marcela Mitenes, who just won a Democratic primary in Sunset Park for Assembly, ran very heavily on this, got the DSA's backing, progressive Democrat. So a lot of progressives see this as a major victory, but there are a lot of people, especially developers, people looking to bring more jobs into the city, who say, you know, this is a death knell for development in the city, that after Amazon didn't happen, after this got killed, it's a signal to developers, to builders, that New York City is closed for
somewhere
business.
else. Yeah, and you mentioned Amazon, and it resonates directly to what happened and in the aftermath of Amazon as well. I'm going to go one step further, which you did not mention and you're completely forgiven because it's before your time, but we had the issue of where to site the water filtration plant in the Bronx, which ultimately was put in Van Cortlandt Park, and the local council member at the time, Oliver Capel, was dead set against it, and then the city council actually voted overwhelmingly to support the building of that in the face of the council member. And right now we've got $1 billion plant not too far from where I am right now. So I am interested in this because of the trend. In this case, the local council member won the battle. Do we have a trend now, or who knows what's going to happen next? I mean, you know, Richie Torres appears to be ready to move on. If they were to want to build something in his neighborhood or in another neighborhood that he thought was not good, I mean, is the council ready to say, well, the heck with that whole idea anyway? If we like it, doesn't matter if you like it. I mean, how do you read that?
You know, it's tough. This had the potential to be maybe not precedent setting, but setting a tone. And obviously member deference, deferring to the local council member and his or her opinions won out at the end of the day. But you know, the council, we're getting almost an entirely new council in 2021, new speaker, new mayor. It'll be an entirely different ball field. I think it'll depend a lot on who's coming in. I think that it's possible you might see the opposite of this, that there might be a council member who agrees with the rezoning, but that has council members fighting against it because they feel that it's not in the best interest. You've seen some candidates saying that they're not going to adhere to member deference if they feel that the member doesn't have the best interest of their community at heart. So it's almost impossible to tell. But you saw under Christine Quinn, she was a little bit more heavy-handed with land use issues, more willing to finagle behind the scenes, maybe override a couple of members, try to negotiate to make sure a deal went through. You haven't really seen that as much with Corey Johnson. You didn't really see that with Melissa Mark Viverito. It remains to be seen what kind of land use operations the next speaker will have. The next speaker feels that he or she should get involved with land use issues and try to help negotiate them, try to get the best deal for the city and for the communities. Maybe you'll see more of that. But
who knows? Let me just interject a couple of Bronx concepts in there. Number one, Rafael Salamanca is going to be one of the people, I believe, in the running for a speaker, and he currently is the chair of land use. And he has been very strong about the rezoning on Southern Boulevard in his own district, and in fact basically thumbed his nose at the mayor and said, unless you do a study of what the effects will be, I'm not going to approve it as land use chair. If he is the speaker, very interesting. The second thing I want to mention, we are going to get at least 6 of 8 new council members in the Bronx. If I had to predict, I think you're going to see home rule take a stronger stand. I don't know. I don't know how that will play. What is your point of view, or at least your perspective, on rezonings in general? There are many people who have really been angry, certainly in the Bronx, the Jerome Avenue rezoning, about the way these have come down. Do you think there's a lesson to be learned from Industry City, or is it still in the big confusion that that this project has laid out for us?
I think that it gets a little complicated. I think first of all, a lot of people have bad opinions of rezonings, in part because they so often happen, especially these big neighborhood rezonings that come down from the mayor, often target lower income and communities of color. You don't necessarily...
Those are the neighborhoods that get targeted because they want to develop those neighborhoods. I mean, so there's a logic to it, even if it's unfair and even if the way it plays is those people get displaced. I mean, that's what the issue is.
The recent announcement, I believe de Blasio said that he is going to move forward with a Soho rezoning. That's a wealthier neighborhood. There's room for development. And, that's one of the kinds of neighborhoods that people say, well, there's room for more development in some of these other neighborhoods. You should rezone them as well and not just rezone, lower income neighborhoods. But there's also, it's different. Industry City was a private development. It wasn't from the city. Right. There was no, there were no tax breaks involved. Andrew Kimball was very proud of that. He said there's no, no incentives. This is different than Amazon. It's a little bit different because Industry City owned the land already. They just wanted to rezone it for different purposes.
Rebecca, we're going to have to run. Rebecca Lewis, you are just fantastic, and I can guarantee you we are going to invite you back. I really want you to tell Jeff and all the people at City and State, send her up to the Bronx. We want you to write some stuff about us. Directly, not indirectly like this one. Anyway, all the best to you. Rebecca Lewis from City and State, New York. She does a great job. I've been more and more in love with this publication. Every single week I read it cover to cover. They do an unbelievable job. Thank you so much. Regards to all our friends there, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, and thanks for inviting me on.
Great. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to go to her alma mater. We are going to go to WFUV. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Bronx Buzz. That was a very, very interesting segment. And what was real nice, and we found out that Rebecca Lewis is an alum of Fordham and WFUV, which is just an unbelievable operation. And right now we're going to go to a Bronx connection. And that is a Bronxnet's Bronx Connections program, which is hosted by reporters from WFUV. So let's say good evening to Eliot Schiaparelli. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. And Nora Thomas. Nice to have you, Nora.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Elliot, let's start with you. We've had you on the show. Talk to me a little bit about Bronx Connections and how it works and the relationship between FUV and Bronxnet, which I think is about the healthiest thing we can do in local media.
Well, the collaboration is absolutely fantastic from both the perspective of how it can inform the Bronx and from how much it can teach Nora and I as students at Fordham as well as journalists at WFUV. I was on the show before to talk about a story I did for the Fordham Ram, but Bronx Connections is a collaboration between FUV, Bronxnet, and Norwood News, which is a print publication, and we're really lucky to have it. This is actually not the first iteration of Bronx Connections. We've covered things from gang violence to healthcare in the Bronx in 5-part series twice a year for the past 3 or 4 years. So we always love collaborating with Bronxnet.
For me and actually for Bronxnet and for this program, which was set up to promote journalists, to promote, this kind of activity in the Bronx, this is exactly what it's about. Nora Thomas, you have not been on the program before. So first of all, welcome to the show. And a little bit about your interest in being a reporter, working at WFUV, and then of course on Bronx Connections.
Hi, yes, you're quite right. I've never done anything. I am actually not a journalism student like Elliot and many of my coworkers at WFUV. I study history and political science. But I had some friends who were involved at WFUV, and just the way they would talk about their experiences, it sounded like they were doing just the coolest stuff ever. And I'm so happy that I joined on because now I am seriously considering a career in journalism, and I really love working on the Bronx in particular. And I just feel like there's so many opportunities to cover things that people don't hear about in the Bronx. And so I'm just so grateful for this opportunity.
So let's real briefly, where are you from? Fordham students generally come from elsewhere. So you're not here from the Bronx. And then I'm going to reflect on what you said about our home borough.
Was that for me?
Yes.
All right, sorry.
This is a follow-up.
I'm from Seattle.
Oh, wow. Coming all the way. Boy, oh boy, I'd love to ask you what's going on over there. That's a whole other, that'll be a whole other interview. But your comment that, number one, there's a lot of things in the Bronx that nobody knows about. This is why I do what I do, and I've been doing it since, practically, if not totally, before you were born. And then also, it is a fertile place. Nora, let's face it, there's so much here. You could walk down the block and find 5 stories that are worth telling. And the other thing I will tell you, your inspiration is exactly the same. And because you come from, let's say, political science or history, I was an English major in college. And my interest in doing this was enhanced by the fact that I learned about language, so welcome aboard. Your application of political science and history fits right in. And if this is what you want to do, let's do it. Elliot, let's talk about what's been on Bronx Connections over the past couple of weeks and what you have enjoyed reporting and commenting on, and then we'll ask Nora the same question.
Yeah, so I kicked off the series with our first episode on climate change and the environment in the Bronx. So we talked to members of the Bronx Sunrise movement and members of Friends of Moshalou Parkland, which is Elizabeth Quaranta, who I guess you've had on the show before or talked to before. But we try for this iteration of Bronx Connections to cover national issues at the local level. So how are these issues that voters are saying are very important to them going to affect the Bronx? So then last week we aired, or this week, I think it aired on Tuesday, actually. It aired.
Well, who knows, and in fact, for folks who don't know, we record it on Wednesday, we play it back on Thursday. There's a certain timelessness because everything's available online anyway. So go ahead. It doesn't matter what week it was.
And when you're in quarantine too, well, I guess we're not technically in quarantine anymore, but in the era of COVID, everything feels like it's the same day.
Yeah.
The most recent episode we've put out, Nora handled, and I'll let her talk more about it, but it was on crime and social justice. So she talked a lot about the two presidential candidates' platforms, and then she talked to some Bronx residents and Richie Torres, Bronx
official,
council member.
I want to just go back to the environment thing. I believe from my own study of the Bronx and talking to people every week on my two programs, this program, and of course I host Bronx Talk as well, that the environmental issues are so personal to people in the Bronx. And there is, I find, a kind of a welling up of a movement of people who all understand the same things, embodied maybe by the "we're going to do it ourselves" attitude that Elizabeth has at Marshall Parkland. Why don't you just address that before we get back to Nora?
Yeah, absolutely. I just get very excited about what my colleagues are doing.
That's
so,
great.
What I learned through my reporting was that the asthma rates in the Bronx are just horrible. And it's not the fault of Bronx residents. It's these highways and waste treatment plants and like
trucks.
Exactly. Constant. And people like Elizabeth Quaranta and Bronx Sunrise movement, which was just started over the summer by young people who really want to make a difference in the Bronx, are out there on the ground. They're trying to teach their neighbors about what's happening, and they're trying to make a difference. So Bronx Sunrise is trying to create a solid waste advisory board, which the Bronx should have, but doesn't have right now. Manhattan has one, and they have all these goals like zero waste, and it's fantastic, but let's just get that a little bit further north. So that's what
this spirit is, of course, evident in the Bronx. And I hope viewers who are watching these young reporters, I feel like it, this is what we need. We need young reporters who understand what young people are advocating for. And that, of course, will be the future. When I hear these things, I'm energized because we really need to make some changes in this regard. All right, let's talk about crime and policing. I guess the way to ask it, Nora, is what did you learn from doing this program, from doing this studying that applies to your work as a political scientist and a historian?
I think by all means, more than anything, I really came to the full realization of just how touchy a subject that is right now. And it was very difficult to basically coax people to speak with me about crime. Because, I mean, I'm sure everyone universally thinks that, communities should be safe and we should work in the best ways to minimize crime. But just given the social climate nationwide and, growing calls to scrutinize police practices that have just sort of been taken for granted for decades, and certainly not helped by the president's rhetoric, which is extremely inflammatory. I think people feel afraid to advocate for a middle ground in any way. Like it's so polarized.
Makes people afraid to speak up, because if they speak up, they get accused of, let's say they really want to look at alternatives for policing. They say, you don't want law and order, which actually came up in the first presidential debate. And then, of course, on the other side, if you're too heavy-handed, then everybody says, hey, wait a minute, people have died as recently as, this past weekend, and so it's very revealing that you said it was hard to get people to talk about it. Last question for you, and then we're going to have to start wrapping it up. I believe that the phrase defund the police has harmed the dialogue, because the people who are saying defund the police in the interviews I've done, they say it's not quite defunding the police, it's putting more funding to social services, to supporting the police, to finding I think we saw Joe Biden talking about, when a police officer goes to deal with some sort of a disturbance, maybe having in the appropriate place a mental health expert or a psychologist or somebody to help, or at least, you know, have a police officer who's educated in that, in those circumstances, is a way of reforming our criminal justice system. Your thoughts about that?
I do agree that I think it functioned as a confusing term, because there are a lot of people that strongly advocate for police reform and for the creation of agencies to handle reports of crime that perhaps involve people with mental health problems, and just sort of taking elements of violence out of the way we engage with members of the community. But there are also people calling for the abolition of the police. And I think people have gotten confused because defunding isn't a clear term, because it could either mean just less funding and reallocating that funding to other programs, or it could mean just like abolishing the police. And I think that has really functioned to make the conversation about police reform much more polarizing, because most people don't support the abolition of the police.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying, is that it was the wrong phrase, and I'm not advocating either side at the moment. I'm just saying when you put it out there, it created a more difficult dialogue, when the one thing, of course, that we need is dialogue. Okay, so let's see. Nora, will you be hosting other segments? Like, what's next for you? And then Elliot's going to get the same question.
Right now, I'm working on our next segment, which will be number 4, which is on immigration, which is obviously a really, really important issue in the Bronx, and something that's similarly very polarizing in this presidential climate.
Well, you are right in the thick of it. I'll tell you that. Elliot, and what is next for you? And then Elliot, also, if you could tell us when the program is on and how people can see it. Bronx Connections on Bronxnet Television, collaboration, which is what we need everywhere between WFUV and Bronxnet. Go ahead, Elliot.
Yeah, so we've been giving Nora the touchiest subjects, I guess. I'm sorry about that. I am working on episode 3 right now, which will be out next Tuesday night at 9:30. It premieres on Bronxnet, and then you can watch it on WFUV.org or norwoodnews.org or Bronxnet.org, where you can also listen and read the story. So we're doing this. And
what is it going to be about? You didn't tell us.
Oh, right. It's about health and healthcare. So we're going to tell you what I'm sorry?
I said, that.
Still a little touchy, but
yeah, but vital nonetheless.
And then our final episode is going to be about racial and economic inequality.
Wow.
And all 5 of these issues are major issues that voters say are very important to them in the upcoming.
Absolutely. And I'm so thrilled that you're doing it. I'm also happy when I hear 9:30 p.m. because Bronx Talk is on at 9. So we will share the same hour on Bronxnet Television. Listen, Nora Thomas and Eliot Schiaparelli, I am so thankful for you for joining us, and also for what you're doing. We need you so badly in the Bronx. And I know Michael Max and all the people at Bronxnet couldn't be happier to have you doing this work here on Bronxnet Television. Thank you so much. Say hello to all our buddies over there at WFUV.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see you around. Folks, that's it for the Bronx Buzz. I hope you enjoyed a very delightful and informative program.